to Diving Deeper Discussions. My name is John Wood. I'm the regular host of this monthly series that are focused on an article or book review that's published in the ASA Journal Perspectives on Science and Christian Faith. And today, our guest is Ebenezer Blasu. He's a research fellow and the director at the Akrofi Kristaller Institute of Theology and Mission and Culture in Ghana. And we are so pleased to have him with us today. Ebenezer, welcome to Diving Deeper.
Thank you, John.
So, Ebenezer, I would like to get to know you a little bit better. You bring to us some remarkable interdisciplinary work. You've got a unique background in research, graduate level teaching. You've done agricultural and environmental science work and have publications there, together with your keen insights into Christian doctrine, ethics, theology of human need. It's a remarkable breadth of interdisciplinary scholarship, and all looking at the environment from a particularly African perspective. And that's really, I think, vital today. Ebenezer's work is part of a surge. I was talking to him just before we came on. It's a surge of theological, eco-theological work that's coming out of Africa and I think the whole of the Southern Hemisphere now. And you're contributing to that. You have published a book, African Theocology, Studies in African Religious Creation Care. And today we're going to be talking about your recent article in Perspectives, African Theocology, a Theocentric Paradigm for Creation Care in the African Church.
Yeah.
So that word, theocology, is an interesting inversion of a more familiar. I see eco-theology, the environment and the Christian, faith and nature, or we see creation care often, but theocology, this is going to be interesting. But before we get to that term and our questions, let's just get to know you a little bit. Could you talk to us a bit about your background? You can start with your faith journey if you'd like, and then education, or if you'd like education first, your choice. Just give us a little thumbnail sketch. Who are you, Ebenezer?
Who are you? I am Ebenezer Blasu, a Presbyterian, born, bred, grown in the Presbyterian Church of Ghana. I therefore attended my basic schools that were established by the Presbyterian Mission, the Basel Mission in Ghana. And then I went forth to the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, where I studied for my first degree, agricultural science, and had opportunity to go back to do Master of Philosophy in reproductive physiology among ruminants. So animal reproductive physiology, still part of agricultural science in the highest level. And then I went teaching in a Presbyterian university. And that was the time part of what I am doing today actually started, because I was the chaplain of the university, at the same time lecturing in environmental science.
Okay.
And there came a time when some of the students and my colleague lecturers were not happy that I was introducing my Presbyterian ethics into teaching environmental science. The students confronted me that they paid the fees to study environmental science and not Presbyterian ethics. And some of the lecturers, agreed with them, saying the, the university, the National Accreditation Board did not accredit the environmental science with religious aspect.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I introduced religious morality into it, it was against the accreditation board.
Mm-hmm.
I personally was a little bit discomforted because I was a Presbyterian minister,
Mm-hmm.
Presbyterian chaplain of a Presbyterian university. I took it for granted that teaching environmental science with my Presbyterian ethical understanding should be a natural goal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I decided to research into that to find out whether it was right or wrong to teach science
Mm-hmm.
with religious implication.
Excellent.
That
I'm,
was
I'm
what
smiling.
sent
I'm
me.
looking.
That's right.
I'm smiling, Ebenezer. I'm looking at the audience. There's smiles here. The story you've just told is a story that many ASA members have experienced in their professional careers, and
Mm-hmm.
it's wonderful to hear you tell it. So,
Yeah.
and now tell us how you came to this 2020 publication. Was that your doctoral work, or what? What was that?
Yes, that is the doctoral work. So from the background of the story I just told you, I asked for time off from
Mm-hmm.
teaching in the Presbyterian University
Mm-hmm.
in order to go and do more academic research into the issue.
Okay.
That sent me to Akrofri Christella Institute of Theology, Mission, and Culture.
Okay.
It was there that I was, tutored by the late Professor Alison Howell, an Australian,
Mm.
but who spent most of her time, 40 years plus, in Ghana as a physical geographer,
Mm-hmm.
anthropologist, and an environmentalist.
Mm-hmm.
Then there was the late Professor Andrew Walls, who was one of the great, missiologists, and they listened to my story and my passion for why I wanted to see
Mm-hmm.
why it was not possible to integrate religious morality into science.
Mm-hmm.
Their teaching and their encouragement led me to go into researching
Yes.
for my PhD work.
Okay.
And the topic I chose got eventually, edited into what I now call African theocology.
Very good. Well, that's very good. And in addition to your research, you've also done teaching at the graduate level, master's and PhD level. And I see that you're a research fellow at University of Leeds. Is that correct? Tell us just a thumbnail sketch about that.
Yes, so I lecture at the Akrofri Christella Institute at the master's and doctoral level.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 2024, Leeds University invited me as a virtual research fellow and funded part of still this African theocology idea. They wanted to know more. And
Okay.
because I was still in the research of
Mm-hmm.
some aspects of it. So they funded that and made me a virtual research fellow for the University of Leeds in
Oh,
UK.
okay. Very good. So, finally, by way of introduction, how did you bump into or find out about the American Scientific Affiliation, and how did you come to send this article that we're discussing today to the Perspectives Journal?
Thank you for that. When you called the name Becky English, then that struck a chord. And I said, yes, I have this name before, or I have sent some information to this lady before.
Mm,
It all happened that when I was lecturing at Akrofri Christella Institute, there was an American lady called Wendy Quay. She came to Ghana uh, to be part of our master's program. And she got to know when I was lecturing them
Mhm.
the passion with which I was talking about contextual theology for environment. She got fascinated. So when she finished her program and left back to America, I think it was 2023, July, she sent a message to me, but, oh, Prof, there is some program by the American Scientific Affiliation. They were going to have a conference at American Catholic University.
Oh, yes.
And
Right.
the kind of things they are talking about, I think you can produce something interesting to them.
Yes.
But then the day she was talking to me, like a Thursday evening, the following day, Friday, was going to be the close of accepting proposals. So I spent the whole night doing my best to submit. And I think that was the time I started interacting with Becky English because I was sending information back and front. What should I do? Who should I contact to do what? And eventually, they invited me to come and present my paper.
Hmm.
But I lacked the funding for airfare and
Yeah.
lodging. And so the long and short form of it was that after all this long debate of going back and front, I couldn't have time to go to present the paper personally. But
Okay.
then there was one of the organizers, I forgot the name. Then she said, "Look, Ebenezer, there is another way out. Can you send the full paper to be published in a journal that was about to come called Perspective of you
Very
know,
good.
that's right." So I said, okay. I mean, the important thing is that we should share these ideas that God is giving to us. Whether I came to America personally to discuss it, or it can pass through publication, why not? So
Hmm.
that is how I sent the paper. And the lady connected me to Professor Stephen Contick. I think that's the name. I think Stephen Contick. And and Stephen looked at it and said, yes, Ebenezer, we can't publish it immediately. It has to go through a few processes of editing to get the English to American standard. And so I said, oh, fine, I'm relaxed. Eventually, this year, June 2025, Stephen managed to get the paper published.
Right. And here we are today,
And here
having
we
a
are today.
conversation. So the whole point of diving deeper is to take these published papers after they've been through review and you've had that conversation and now have an in-depth conversation and try and move out and make more connections. So thank you for that introduction. Um, at this point, I think what we'll do is we're going to move to the audience. And the way that works, for those of you who are familiar with this, is if you look at the bottom of your screen, you should find a reactions area, and there's a raised hand function. If you would go ahead and indicate with that raised hand function, it'll show up on my screen, hopefully. And typically the machine moves them right up to where I can see them, and then we'll take questions in order. And Becky is going to give you the capacity to unmute and ask your questions when I call on you. We have had several questions submitted ahead of time, and I'm going to begin with asking Del Kuhn to unmute. And Del, if you would ask your question, and we'll get started.
Hey, Ebenezer, I really appreciate your article and especially the African-centric view you're bringing and the amount of space in your article that you're kind of filling us into the background. Kind of question I have is how, and I'm going to mispronounce it, theocology can interact with more Western sensibilities to environmental move to the environment. And I'm suggesting that maybe gold mining in Ghana might be a kind of a test case for that, because the mining itself leads to deforestation and pollution. And it's also, much of it is controlled by Western interests, Canada, Australia, United States, China. And I just kind of wonder what you see in something like that as a synergy between theocology and probably a Western approach on doing something to clean up the environment.
Hmm. Hmm. Thank you, Dale. Like I told John, I split this question into two because he sent it to me earlier so that we can follow. The first part, if I understand you clearly, is asking how I imagine this new primal environmental consciousness will interact with the growing environmental consciousness, both secular and Christian in the West.
Right.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
And,
Yes.
Mhm.
With the more specific example, possibly with a specific example of how you would see that as mining in Ghana as an example
Yes,
of greater
I'll come to that.
Okay.
That's the second part of it. So the first part, I just want to respond by saying, I am excited personally to know that there is a growing environmental consciousness, whether in secular front or in Christians in the West. Because as far as I could remember, it has been a struggle from what we were learning that environmental issues, particularly among evangelical Christians in the West, for a long time was not something to drive home with. I knew in 2010, the World Evangelism Association, WEA, they had a program in Cape Town in Africa under the theme, God's Word to God's World. And a lot of discussions about the environment went into that discussion in South Africa. Then about 2013, thereabout, we had some students from Calvin University to Ghana, to my institute. And when I was presenting issues on environmental ethics, I saw their reaction and responses to show they were not very interested. And so I was a little bit disappointed. That is why I am excited if you tell me, and I know it is true, because I interact with some Western theologians and Christians on environmentalism, and I know it's true that there is a growing consciousness of environmentalism. And for me, that is good news. If you want to know how there can be interaction with this growing environmental consciousness, I'll simply notice that surely this kind of primal eco-ethical consciousness will enhance the new development in the West now. It will enhance it because if we understand exactly what I am postulating, and we can all buy into it and begin to push it gradually, I hope it will change our cultural setting about the environment, whether Christians or secular people. It may not be an easy task, I am aware, nor will the results be sudden. It is a long-term project, but needs to begin anyway. Because they say a journey of 1,000 miles still have to start with just one step. So my point is, if we buy into this new idea and begin to push it with the growing consciousness of environmentalism in the West, it will be all the good for it. And that is why I personally think we will begin by focusing on Christians, you know, because the Christians can make it a point to make it part of their discipleship, teaching children and youth about this environmental consciousness with the primal impulsion included in it. Yes, it will be a gradual process, but I believe it will yield a good result in generations to come. We may not necessarily have the advantage of seeing the full positive results. But if we take the positive faith and begin to bring back into our children and our youth across the world, particularly Christians, disciple them to see environmentalism as part of the church's mission, beginning with our cultural settings, because there are innate things already in us, in every culture, as part of God's deposit, being in his image to take care of creation the way he does it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that is why, if there is this consciousness growing in the West now, I think there will be a positive interaction if we buy into this idea and push it up. Talking about the secular people, if they do not want to buy into it because of the God factor, I believe they can at least look at it from the humanistic point of view. Because theology insists on two central principles: love God, love neighbor, period. Everything I have said and shall be talking about is all zeroed on love God, love neighbor. If you want to have the impetus, the impulsion, the motivation to act ecologically without anyone supervising you, it's all embedded in our understanding of the biblical law of love God, love his creation as neighbor. And so if the secular people can't do it because of love God, I believe they may still do it because of love neighbor.
That's a really helpful introduction. Del, before we get to your second question, the focus on mining, gold mining.
Yeah.
Ebenezer, let me just ask you this. What are you seeing in terms of your students in your classrooms? You're in front of students from time to time in your teaching. Are they responding to this? Are they coming with questions and responding? Do you see any change going on in your?
Oh, yes, positively.
Okay.
And some of them wonder why my institute is not being publicized loudly enough if we have stuff like this to get into people. Why is it that not many know about Acrophil Crystella? And they themselves just came by chance to get to know. And I have students who have started projects on their own in their churches, having gone through my class.
Yes. Well, we'll get to that response, because your experience is a common one. It's shared by many people in many different cultures. And there are Christians working. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But Del, you had the second part you wanted to get at, the gold mining question, right?
The gold mining and the rubrics there are all what Del has said already. But the main question he's asking is, could this turn into a fruitful collaboration of primal consciousness and Western commercial and environmental concerns? Mm-hmm. And I resoundingly say yes. But it depends on whether the Ghanaian government, or any government for that matter, itself catches the principles that I am propagating. If the government knows how these things are really contextually effective in our cultural experience, decolonize their thinking, and therefore use these ideas, retrieve the primal consciousness and insist on how best to incorporate it in agreements that they sign with miners, insisting on it that this is Ghana. This is our agricultural understanding of mining. The experiences we have had so far are not healthy to us. Henceforth, you want to do commercial mining in Ghana? These are the conditions. I believe that will begin to change the culture, the negotiations with every engineer or who is coming to do some mining. So sure, there can be some collaboration, but it depends on the political will. That's the way I look at it.
All right, thank you. Del, do you have a follow-up there?
Not really. I thought it was an excellent answer and excellent hope. That's why I put 2050 in my question. And all I can do is hope that we don't keep siloing ourselves so we're all in our separate echo chambers.
Yes. Yeah, thank you for that. I'll remind you, if you have a question, to go ahead and put it in the, give you a raised hand. And I am looking, Becky, is Keith Miller with us today? Keith was not able to make it.
No, he is not.
Okay.
Yeah, but John, is it possible that there's another aspect of there's question which I pushed down?
Okay.
Yeah, he asked, any thoughts on how this sector will look like in 2050? I'm not sure he asked that question or it was to you.
No, that was simply my way of saying this is long term. It's not something we're going to do by next year. And
Exactly.
you address that with the government and with your students.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I was just mentioning. I don't think what we are looking at and discussing now is just for the immediacy. It's a long-term project, but my faith and passion is let us begin. Let's see the necessity of it. And let us begin, particularly as Christians. Take faith in the God who called us to participate in taking care of his creation with him. We're supposed to be his co-workers. And he does his sustaining of creation with his own laws already, or principles. They are all there in the scriptures. And if we're able to follow them, take a step, trusting him in the years to come. But to answer that question part also, particularly in the case of Ghana, I realized that if by 2050, from now to 2050, the next 25 years or so, things continue to be the way they are, without decolonizing the mindset of the government and the officials who negotiate for mining and other such, environmental resource harvesting in this country, the way the rate activity is going, without bringing the cultural values into it, we may be heading for trouble in the next 25 years. A lot of challenges are going to be meeting us. Food insecurity, health problems, reproduction problems. Political insecurity. It's already having its ugly heads in various dimensions already. And that is why I'm so passionate pushing this, not only in the global level, the beginning with the country setting. It may interest you to know that just last Thursday, on the 4th of December, the moderator of the Presbyterian Church of Ghana called me and said it is important that we raise this topic at the national level now. And so they organized a conference, a national public conference or public lecture. And there were three of us were supposed to deliver. And I was the keynote speaker. And he was excited about the things we are pushing virtually telling the news, the media men around to please carry this message, carry the message to the government so that we can all begin to relook into ourselves. I mean, the number of people in government who are Christians are more than those who are secular people.
You're saying Ghana is still or is a largely Christian nation, right? Is there over half
Yes,
the population
yes,
identified as believers in some way?
yes, yes, over 70%.
70%, yeah. But this conversation about theocology, but about the environment and faith, you don't often hear about it from your fellow believers?
Oh, until I brought this idea in between 2017 and 2020,
Mm.
if any Christian wanted to talk about the theology of creation and creation care, they would at best talk about eco theology.
Mm.
And of course, when I was being tutored by Professor Howell and Professor Andrew Walls, that was what they were teaching me. And then there was a difference because in Acrophil Crystal Institute, we don't do systematic theology.
Okay.
We do contextual theology.
Yeah.
And therefore, these two professors pushed me to go back to my hometown and take my research work there in the context of the people and find out exactly what is their own thinking. Do they have the mind of eco-theology? Or what exactly is there that motivates them
Mm-hmm.
in the pre-colonial times to be able to take care of the environment before colonialism and before Christian mission from the West?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Did these people destroy the environment the way we see it now? Go back home.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that was what led me back to my hometown, Sokwe, where I'm talking to you from right now.
Right. Yeah, that's an interesting lens, Ebenezer, that you have, because I'm thinking here in North America, I have here in my office um, books by Diane Glav, a Black scholar, on the engagement of the Black church in North America, going back through the institution of slavery and the environment, and their, how that history has worked and played it out. But it's not the first thing that jumps into your mind, and people don't often come. So we're in this stage of scholars doing work like yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That work is slowly making its way out.
That's right.
So I'm going to ask another. Janelle, did you have a question? I saw your hand raised.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think one of the challenges in the evangelical church in North America is the fear that creation care or eco-theology is about worshiping nature and not God. And I wondered if there were similar concerns within the church in Ghana.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. So, like I said, after for over 200 years of mission influence in Ghana, until of late, that kind of thinking has always been there. And that's why we call it a dilemma for the church. A dilemma because the Christians in Ghana still have the cultural feeling within them of how their ancestors were responding to ecological issues before Christian mission and colonization. But then the colonial powers and the Western missionaries made them to see any pre-mission ideas of ecology as satanic, demon, idol worshiping. And so we were compelled directly and indirectly to say, okay, since I'm now a Christian, I don't have to go there. And yet within you, you know you are not free. So we were living in two worlds. And that also is one of the impetus for me to go back home and study this. The result is what I have brought out as ecology and not theology.
Yes.
Why? Because studying and analyzing exactly what was the pre-Christian understanding, the cultural feeling, and respect for the environment in the African sense was the fear of God, deities, ancestors, who they thought were clothed in the environment. And they would go there to pray to them because they were there. So I analyze these thoughts and question them. They tell you, we are not worshiping the forest. We have the concept of God existing in the forest. We have the concept that God uses the forest to clothe himself. To cut trees from the sacred forest is to unclothe your God. It is to make your God naked. And he definitely would not take care of you if you do that. So therefore, they put their hands off. Professor Komi Bediaku, the founder of Acrophil Crystalla Institute, taught us that as research people, we don't go to correct this type of data and rubbish it, that it is nothing, there's nothing good in it because we are now Christians. Rather, we take it as raw information and we process it through the scriptures. He called it converting the cultural ideas to Christ, using the gospel as the hermeneutic, the gospel as a prism. Indeed, when you asked me whether I have some slides to show, that was what I was actually going to show. I wanted to show you how we do that, how we take the African cultural ideas of environment and taking care, process it through the gospel, and come out with ideas that are pointers to Christ in the pre-colonial system. When I did that, I saw so many things that we have been overlooking. One, the main impulse for the Superior African area to be able to keep hands off the forest or the river or any environmental structure for that matter was the understanding that God was immanent in the forest, in the river, and everything. Then quickly the idea struck him, but Christians talk of a God who is called Emmanuel. And the meaning of Emmanuel is El is with us. Where are we before Emmanuel is with us? We are in the forest. We are in the water. We are in the desert. We are in the land. And Emmanuel is with us in the desert, in the forest, in the water, and everywhere where we locate ourselves. The primary religionists know this, and therefore he doesn't want to destroy that area. And then the missionaries come to accuse them that you are worshiping deity. And they said, no, we are only afraid of God, ancestors, and deities if we touch that place where they are living, where we are also living with them. We have a holistic worldview where we don't separate the spirit form from the natural, the physical form. So it was easy for me to understand why they could experience the presence of spiritual forces within the same environment that they are living as physical human beings.
Yeah.
It's natural for me because that's the worldview we have. And so I say, so before the African puts his or her hand off creation, the first thing is one, recognize God's presence in creation. Two, because of God's presence, respect him, be afraid of him, and then therefore do not touch what he asks you not to touch. Is it scriptural? Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Is it biblical? Oh, yes. From Genesis to Revelation, we are told there is a God with us within his creation. He did not create and then leave it, abandon it. He is in it, sustaining it, working it out day in, day out for our good. Can Christians go back and have that sense, a sense of the presence of God with us? And that sense should move us, therefore, to love this God. And the primary religionists, they don't use the word love, they talk of fear. But I interpret that fear to mean, for Christians' sake, love God. Indeed, if you love God, you'll fear him. The scripture says the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. Fear not because he's going to harm us, but fear because we give him such an utmost respect. And he's somebody who shouldn't be interfered with, at least not to touch the thing he has asked us not to. If we can have this impulsion because of our sense of God with us, we'll also keep our hands off, just like the primary religionists people also put their hands off because of the fear of God in the.
So Ebenezer, as we were beginning, I mentioned you have this unique background. You're a Presbyterian minister, and I ask you about preaching, and you used to do more than you do now. You do some, but you also have this science background, and you see them, folks. We see it coming together. And
Yes.
so there's a message there that has to be preached. So I want to move from preaching back into a discussion and conversation. I want to pull a couple of people in from the audience, because as you've been talking, I'm looking at folks that have experience in other countries in Africa, and both there and here in North America, with exactly the kind of barriers and the kinds of conversations that you're having. And Harry Spaulding, I'm looking at you and thinking, if you'd unmute and talk about it, you've written and you have worked with people extensively in several countries on this notion of farming in God's way. You might want to introduce that or other parts of the conversation. I'm tempted to name a bunch of people around the audience here who have experience with exactly this challenge. So, Harry, would you want to talk to us about farming in God's way? Because I think it's the application of what Ebenezer's been talking about.
Exactly.
Yeah, thank you, Ebenezer. And let me also commend you for your paper. I thoroughly enjoyed it and learned a lot. I'm always interested in what I've called African creation wisdom, and you are the epitome of that. Thank you for your thoughts. I have several questions, and I won't ask them all, but maybe I'll just start with one missiological kind of question, and then I'll ask a question about farming God's way that John is asking. And I'm a geographer, so I'm not a theologian, I'm not a missiologist, but I have a missiological question, which is in an idea or maybe an approach in Western missiology is something called redemptive analogy. It came about in a popular book called The Peace Child, and I won't describe all of that, but the basic idea is that missions and the spreading of the gospel across cultures, every culture has within it some kind of feature, story, belief, something that can be redeemed through the gospel, and that is a key to transforming that culture. And I was just wondering if that's an idea that you have come across or familiar with. That's a kind of general question. My second question is from a more practical, and that is the idea of farming God's way, which originated in Zimbabwe and brings elements of the biblical creation story into farming practice. And it connects faith and agriculture. And I was wondering whether farming God's way has found its way to Ghana.
John, may I go on?
Yes, please do. Please answer Harry's question. Yes.
Yeah. He was first asking of whether what I am talking about has anything in connection or have a similar idea with redemptive analogy. Because in mission work, there is always something in every culture that has to be redeemed by the gospel. And I say that is true. The way we look at it in African theology is to read, Acts chapter 14, verse 17, which tells us God does not leave himself without a witness in any culture. It doesn't matter what culture. There is always something that is redemptive, something that can be redeemed in a culture, something that points to God, and yet can only be clear when processed through the gospel. And so what I'm talking about is about the same thing. Because God does not leave himself without a sign, a deposit, the idea of creation care was also located in African cultures. Of course, because all cultures, the center of every culture is humanity. And humans are cultural beings, first and foremost, from their mind. When Bediako will tell you, culture begins from the mind. Your perceptions, your belief systems, and all that become translated into actions that come. So before you act culturally, it is first a kind of episteme, thinking. And so in every culture, God has some deposit. But then sin, as we know, came to make every culture fallen and needed to be redeemed in Christ.
Mm-hmm.
When you did redeem that feature in the culture, its real outlook comes out. And that's exactly what I'm talking about in African theology.
Yeah.
Then he was asking whether farming by God's way
Ebenezer, just before you go to that second one, let me just follow up with this because I think this is fascinating. It seems to me here in North America, we have a strong individualism that dominates. That's who we are. It's
right.
We were centered in God. We were centered in our nation up through the 19th century. And from then on, it's really centered in the individual. And when you center your meaning and purpose in life around the individual, and I mean, I even think of the evangelistic calls that have been focused on me and Jesus. And we don't think, as you're talking, we don't think in terms of redeeming a culture. We redeem individuals.
Individual.
How is it? You find that the same thing in Ghana? Is a similar kind of response when you talk to people?
Yeah. So when that's why I say we live in a dilemma. In a dilemma because naturally, culturally, most Africans, and Africa for that matter, do not endorse individualism. We are a communal set of people in our cultural being.
Yes.
We would always say, I am because you are.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you are not, I am not.
Mm.
And so we don't have only families that are first close. We have close family, but we have extended family, and we respect all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So my father's brothers, sisters, uncle is still my family member.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Well, this is
I'm supposed not to do anything against such people.
yeah. Yeah.
That goes with the Bible idea of love neighbor
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and think of neighbor first before you.
I think that's an important piece. I'm not sure it comes out as much in your article, but an important sort of theme that could be built on. But now, do you want to go to the second part of the question from
Yes,
Harry?
he was asking whether farming God's way is common in Ghana.
Mm-hmm.
I would say the idea is not that much spread in West Africa as it is in East Africa.
Mm.
Indeed, I first heard of it or got ideas when I was doing some work for Arusha International.
Mm-hmm.
Arusha came to run a program in Ghana for all most African countries in which they were having their program going on. They assembled here in Ghana, and that was the time I was in the heat of my research. And my professor insisted I should go and listen to what they also do.
Mm-hmm.
In peradventure, I could have some ideas. And the Kenyan brethren displayed how farming God's way is a Christian idea. But I have known that from our cultural religious system already,
Mm-hmm.
that our primary religious people have ways of farming. Of course, they wouldn't interpret it as God's way, but to please the deity. Don't put this one. You cannot have some unnecessary intercropping. You can't go fishing on a certain day because that is the day for the deity. And all those, if you analyze them theologically, they have values of creation care within them.
Mm-hmm.
When you process it biblically, you have the sabbatical law, for example, which tells you, for the sake of Yahweh, do not go to this place, this forest, and that, and do not play this. But they also have it in their culture, even though they didn't know Yahweh.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, farming God's way was somehow in the cultural system. Like everything that can be, redeemed with the scriptures, then you can now begin to term it farming God's way. It is not too spread. The Christian aspect not too spread in Ghana yet, but it is more common in East and South Africa.
Mm-hmm. This is very helpful, Ebenezer. Thank you. Harry, do you have a follow-up there?
I'll just add one piece, Ebenezer, and thank you for your response. I think one of the reasons that it has spread, and I suspect this is consistent with your theoecology, is that Africans have a worldview which is much more holistic than we have in Western culture,
That's
where
right.
we suffer from dualism, and as you pointed out in your paper. And I think that's an advantage, a cultural advantage. It's a missiological advantage.
Yeah.
That's something that is such a gift from God to African people. Your worldview that I just wanted to acknowledge, and that's one of my main learnings of having spent some time in Africa. So thank you for your response.
Yeah. But somehow, painfully, post-colonialism and post-missionary times, as I'm talking about now, it's beginning to be eroded. That worldview and its effect and implications. Of course, every culture is so dynamic. It can be resilient, but it can also be, influenced by others.
Mhm.
200 years plus of colonialism have made it such that the generation of today, in my recent research, which I'm still going on now, is showing that our youth today are beginning to lose, if not all, part of that culture, that worldview. And they begin to think more Western with individualistic way of approaching issues than the communal way, which is very painful. And that's why I'm promoting this theology so that it can begin to rework on our psyche and so that we don't lose what gift God has given to us.
Thank you.
Ebenezer, this has been so helpful, such an interesting conversation and informative. I'm thinking right here as we've closed, I was reminded I reached for a book that I have here by John Stott, and it's the famous Anglican preacher and evangelist who was instrumental in writing the declaration for the Lausanne Covenant on international missions back in the 1970s, and worked together with Francis Schaeffer and a number of other well-known people from internationally to foreground evangelism and missions. But here is Stott on creation care, and he was a bird watcher with a huge life list. He traveled the world, but a very early on and sensitive preacher on caring for creation and expressing the gospel in the kind of way that you're talking about. And it seems to me, I think we all know well, is that the Holy Spirit moved out of Jerusalem through Asia Minor, across to Greece, throughout the Mediterranean and around the world. And it came through a disruption. And we feel like, certainly here in North America, it feels like the sort of locus of the move of the Holy Spirit is in other parts of the world. And certainly for those of us who have been in the creation care orbit for the last 30 or 40 years, and saw the kinds of fruit, but not the kind of development that we'd like to see. So our prayer is that your African view of theocology in Ghana, in Kenya, in South Africa, Zimbabwe, throughout, I'm thinking of almost every country we know of people who are working and thinking. So perhaps the ASA can take that up as Janelle, I'm thinking, as a prayer request and a move. I just sense that the kind of conversations that you're having with your students and with others are vital to this kingdom work. And
thank you.
So we pray that God's blessing on you and your work.
Amen.
We thank you so much for joining us today, for this. And I think I'm going to draw that, now to a close on our conversation. Let me tell you about, and thank you, but let me tell you about next month. In the new year, we're pleased to have Keith Miller join us as the guest host of Diving Deeper. And Keith will be behind the mic here in January and February. He's going to dig into the archives of perspectives and interview authors of some of the most popular downloads in our book reviews. In January, on January 10th, he will be interviewing Michael Ganging, and Michael will be here to discuss his review of QAnon, Chaos, and the Cross, Christianity and Conspiracy Theories. And that'll be the conversation. You won't want to miss that time with Keith. Or in February, when he's talking with another author about generations, the real differences between Gen Z, millennials, Gen Xers, boomers, and the silence.
I'm interested in
Those
that.
are going to be interesting conversations in Diving Deeper. Once again, Ebenezer, thank you so much for joining us. And
Welcome.
all of us at ASA, we wish you all a Merry Christmas. May God richly bless you and your family on this holy day.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. we need African voices for the West.
Amen.
Amen.
And God will provide it.
Yes.
Yeah. So when you have ASA meetings and you can help us to come and participate with you, like I said.
We will.
Ebenezer, I would think Becky and Janelle can introduce you to one of our partners if you're not familiar with Global Scholars and their Society of Christian Scholars, which is an international group of Christian scholars particularly focused on the African continent. There are over 400 Christian colleges and universities across Africa. There's a rich opportunity, and they're doing the kind of networking of those scholars. And so there are some opportunities that we can introduce you to and your colleagues, and we're happy to do that. So just get a hold of the ASA office. And your friends may want to know, we will edit this Diving Deeper episode. After that's edited, it will be then placed up on the ASA YouTube channel.
Yeah.
So you can look
Thank
for
you
it.
very much.
All right.
Yeah, my rector is interested to see how you can have a copy in the archives of the Institute.
Yeah, very good.
Okay.
Yeah. All
Thank
right.
you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.